Hey friends, how are you? It's Mr. McKinney here with Mr. McKinney's Historic Houston. I am excited about the show because Will Howard is on the show today. I'm going to take my mask off so you can hear me a little bit better. I actually want to point this mask out real quick. Check this out, by the way. This was a mask. It was a gift. It's actually kind of modeled after my classic outfit. This is by Olga Lucia Diaz, and she has a company called For Serendipity, and she very kindly made this mask for me, and I love it dearly. It actually, the pockets where it comes out, and you can kind of change it out. But For Serendipity is the name of her company, and the masks are $5, and they go towards different charities that she has outlined. So you can look her up for the number 4, Serendipity. Well, here we are. Check it out. This is the beautiful 1847 Kellum-Noble house, okay? This is Houston's oldest house on its original site, and that's significant because lots of houses have been moved in the Heritage Society. In fact, they all have except for this one. But more importantly, as an historian, we look back at old photos and we can actually tell, based on using this as a marker, where we're at on Bagby Street. And today's all about Bagby. Part of this property used to be Thomas Bagby's land, which is where the street Bagby name comes from. It actually cuts right through his property. So we're going to talk about that today in detail. Well, like I said, here we are. This house has a lot of history. It's been a number of things throughout the years. Once again, built in 1847 by Nathaniel Kellum. Now, he had a brick making company on this site, a little brickyard over here, and he would get clay from the Buffalo Bayou area, right just down from us. So it really is significant, and this was put here in 1967. They got the plaque. The Heritage Society was actually formed to save this old house, and Allison Bell is going to talk about that in a second, and we're going to show you one of the original homes of the Heritage Society before then. In fact, when Allison Bell, oh, there she is. Hey, look at this. It's our executive director, Allison Bell. Hello.
Hello, welcome back.
Look at this. Well, here she is. I was just talking about this amazing, home itself, the 1847 Kellum-Noble house. But talk about the structure behind us. What is this?
Sure. So this is actually just a replica of what would have been. As you know, none of these houses had kitchens in them, so this would have been a replica of the kitchen. But what it really was our first office, our first ticket office, because the Heritage Society started, as you said, in 1954, and we just had the one house, and so we had the one office with our docents selling tickets to see the one house.
I love that. The Quilter's Cottage is what we now call it, because we named it in their honor.
Exactly. We did have sweet little ladies who took the time and quilted, and then we would sell the quilts. We would auction them off at our gala.
Oh my! And we have a quilt in our tea room.
We sure do. We can show that later.
Look at that! Yeah. Oh my gosh! We'll continue. So, and you're going to notice some ADA additions to this place as well. Talk about a renovation that happened recently.
We just recently completed the renovation in November of 2019. It was a 5-year renovation, but the fascinating thing about it was that when they were renovating, they found some artifacts, some very unusual artifacts underneath while they were tunneling out because our foundation was crumbling.
Will you show us some of those artifacts?
I would love to show you
Well, let's go inside. Let's check it out.
So we start with, as I mentioned, the little contractors who were working there started finding unusual things under the house, and they would set them up on the ledge because, as I mentioned, they were digging a whole new foundation. So they would put these unusual artifacts on the ledge around the base of the house, and our collections curator came over.
Ginger Burney.
Yeah. And
swing around this way and look at that real quick. How about that?
And she was called over and realized that these were very important artifacts. They stopped the construction of the house, and they had to call in a working crew from the Archaeological Association here in town, and they stopped and did a 5-month dig and found all these fabulous
Well, if you're talking about anything archaeological and digging in Houston, you're probably talking about Linda Gorski and Louis Albach, because that team is wonderful.
They led the dig, and that was another wonderful woman who had things spread out in her living room.
Oh, let's look at that.
So what we found, this is a chamber pot. As many of you already know this, but this was found in pieces all across this property, and they took the time, many months, to put all the pieces, and you can see they didn't quite find all of them. Back here in the back is some silver that was donated to us through Zervia Noble's family. Which we appreciated.
Well, that is wonderful to be able to have, and she was in the house the longest.
Yes, she was.
Right,
and she started the schoolroom that we'll see in just a moment.
And that's where the Noble name comes from Kellum-Noble. Nathaniel Kellum had the house first. He built the house, and then of course,
bricks from Buffalo Bayou.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
So look, and now where are we at now?
So we are in the formal dining room, which is beautiful. This is where they entertain. It's a little sparse in some of these rooms because we use this house as a facility rental. So we don't want to have too much stuff out here because we have had several rentals out here. We've had birthday parties.
Yeah.
We've had a Founders Day, our Founders Day party.
66 years strong.
Yeah, so it's a beautiful rental. It's a beautiful upstairs, and you can check it out when we're going to go
Now,
through the next.
talk about these items over here. More things that were found during the big dig, right?
Yes. So when they found these items, they were directly under the room that they pertain to. So they found china under the dining room, and they found thumbtacks or little children's toys under the schoolroom, and they found the buttons under the dressing room. So that's where you find. So this is some china called Texas Campaign. And it was found, these chips were found, and it shows you that this was the china that was in there in the house at the time, which is fascinating. And then you saw the fork and the spoon that they found as well. So,
and we want to say hi to Lynette Gully, by the way. Thank you so much, Lynette, for saying hi earlier. And by the way, if you are just now tuning in, we're here at the 1847 Kellum-Noble house with Allison Bell, the executive director, taking us on a wonderful tour of the house before our great speaker, Will Howard, who's going to talk about the history of Bagby Street. Do us a favor real quick. Go ahead and hit the like button. While you're watching this, if you hit that like button, that lets us know that you're here, lets us know that you like what we're doing, and it means a lot to us. So let's continue out the house. Go ahead and lead the way. But hit those like buttons. Let us know that you're there. Thank you again, Lynette, for saying hi. And I love, by the way, these doors, which we're going to kind of chat about. Look at these doors, by the way. You open them both up, and then what do you get?
You get air, a breeze, because they didn't have air conditioning. So it's a breezeway on purpose, hence the name.
Look
Breezeway.
at that, and check out that. So that's so you can open up both doors. Same exact feature upstairs.
Yes.
Just wonderful to be able to have that.
Point out, these are the wonderful people who donated to our renovation project that took 5 years. We had some wonderful local support from foundations in town, individuals, many of our wonderful board members, and of course the Parks Board has always helped. The Houston Parks have always helped us. So we did have a party for them when we went right after the house finished. I just love to point them out because they helped us.
Excellent.
Now
So now tell us where we're at now.
Now we're in what's called the piano room, hence the piano. Mrs. Noble in her school taught piano as well as embroidery, which we'll see when we get closer. So this was another formal room. And of course, every room has a fireplace because that was the only source of heat. And you'll notice this is a old book from the Heritage Society that is the piano book.
Look at that.
Piano lesson. And then we enter into.
Well, actually, let's go back outside. We want to show you the breezeway doors in action. Let's go right over here this way. Open that door on your left.
Okay.
And what I also want to show you is look at these wonderful panels that are throughout. This talks about the history of the property. I think Ginger Burney was involved in this too.
Ginger wrote these panels. This is the second half of the life of the Kellum-Noble house, and the one on the left is the first half of the life of the Kellum-Noble house because it actually started in 1837 is when Mr. Kellum bought this property for $166.
Look at that.
All right, so we'll walk on out here.
Now,
yes,
most people know this legend and lore of a couple things. One, they know this to be where the Houston Parks Department had their office at.
Yes.
They also know this to be a site that the Houston Zoo,
Yes.
not the modern day official Houston Zoo, which was built in 1920. I think 22 is they're going to have their big centennial celebration coming up. However, there were animals here throughout the property. It's part of the history behind this amazing house. But it was also a schoolhouse too, right?
Right. It was.
Well, take us through. Let's learn about the schoolhouse. Come on, follow us.
And there were some unusual animals that were just dropped off here, and so the animal zookeeper had to just kind of take whatever was given to him. So now we're in what would be an idea of what the one-room school, and you've heard of the one-room schoolhouse. So this is the one-room schoolhouse where Miss Noble and her daughter taught. All of this furniture was donated to us by a wonderful man down in the Clear Lake LaPorte area, and he took the time to mail us different papers, and he came to our opening, and he's a very dear person that we were very fortunate. And of course, it would just be the one small bench, that the kids would sit on. And then we have the slate. This was chalkboard, which is actual slate. And When we go around to the last exhibit, there we found pieces of slate under this side of the house.
That is amazing. Well, let's keep going because I want to learn more about the house, and I know our viewers will too. And this is what you're talking about over here. Here's the slate.
Yes, and this is the panel about her school. And here, as I mentioned, is the slate that we found. We found a little thimble because I told you she taught knitting. We found a little, is that a domino? Yes,
yeah, a little domino.
An inkwell. And I love this. These are marbles. And look at the shape of these marbles and what wonderful shape they were. And they were found under this area because this is where the kids were. So again, more excavation, more wonderful pieces.
I love that. Well, let's sit down. Let's get cooking with the actual, show. We love to have this little executive director update on all that's going on at the Heritage Society. So we'll just kind of plug this in.
Great.
And get all excited and ready to learn more about all the great things that are happening here at the Heritage Society with our awesome executive director. Let me just let me let Kai get that on real quick, and I'll.
So have you had a busy week?
Oh my goodness, this week has been,
of course you've been
very busy.
Getting our shows ready, yes.
Oh, nonstop shows. I want to say kudos to our production staff, and you'll get to know them as we get closer into our. We've got a little thank you section that we do, but really want to appreciate all the folks that work to make the show possible because we start the shows. It's a weekly show, as you know, and then we do it. We start working on them definitely 2 or 3 weeks in advance, so it's never constant, ending.
Right.
But we do love what we do. Well, of course, we have with us the amazing Will Howard. He's going to be on the show today. He'll be here shortly. And we're so excited to be able to present him. But before, let's have a chat with our Executive Director, Allison Bell. Let's get going with what's going on with the Heritage Society because people that are out there want to know. And if you're just tuning in, by the way, you're watching our show that we do live weekly. It's called Live from the Heritage Society with Mister McKinney, and we feature different guests. But right now, let's talk about...
we were on the Deborah Duncan show.
That is right. That's from a year ago.
For the birthday party.
For the birthday party. So we do this birthday party
with
Mayor
picture.
Turner every year. And, of course, things will be different this year because of everything that's going on with COVID. But that was a fun opportunity to really promote Houston's birthday, and that's what the Heritage Society has been doing, promoting Houston history since 1954.
And thank you, Deborah Duncan, for letting us be
thank you
on
to
the
Deborah
show.
Duncan for doing that, for allowing us to be on the show. Well, this is where we'll tell people what this photo is.
Sure. So this is actually the family. Which is an old photo that we found that we love because it shows the house, it shows the shutters. A little difference that they've changed some of the columns out. You notice that the columns are different than what we have now. But this is a family photo from 1800s. I mean, it's amazing that we've had that. And I think you've got a few more too. Right?
Oh yeah. Well, this is we talked about this. Tell people about the construction that was going on.
Yes. So this is what I mentioned, the construction. So we feel like perhaps when they built the parking garage next door, it shook the foundation here because we could see signs of cracks. So we, as I said, we had some donors and started the campaign and started this, look, you can see them down there. So as I mentioned, these guys were down there and doing the excavation and they would find all those wonderful artifacts and they would just set them up on here on the ground or just on the ledge. And that's when Ginger said, oh, we better stop. This looks important. So yeah, it was fabulous to see. And then look how beautiful it turned out after 5 years. We're so happy that we have one more phase, but we're going to try to hold off on that as long as possible because we love having this open. People are so happy that this house is back on tour. I mean, I've been here 3 years, and this is the first time I've been able to go inside since it's been finished. So we're very excited.
Oh wow! Look at that. Well, hey, talk about, speaking of events, talk about a big event we have in the fall. People should know about this.
We are very excited. Our luncheon is coming up on September 15th. We have an annual luncheon with a speaker, and then we have an evening event in the fall. So this year's speaker, we're very excited, is J.P. Bryan from the Bryan Museum. We are honoring our wonderful board member and past president Harriet and Truett Latimer are being honored. And then our co-chairs, our honorary co-chairs are Dancy and Jim Ware, who are on the Bryan board, but they're, of course, everybody knows who Dancy Ware is, very active here in Houston.
Public relations, she's the
Public
best.
Relations guru. And so we are having our luncheon. As I said, it's going to be at the Forest Club, which is a historic building out off of Memorial. And of course, we're going to practice CDC guidelines, and we're restricting the number that we can. But we would love it if anybody wants to come and hear J.P. Bryan. I think your next slide you can show that our Laura Woods is our development director, and reach out to her if you want to buy a ticket, because it's really fabulous and it's fun, and we will be very careful about everything too. Of course.
Absolutely. You know, I think it's important for folks to support the Heritage Society because it's been a tough year for us, like
Yes.
it has with so many other nonprofits out there. But we
Absolutely.
don't want you to forget about the great work that we do here, and that we need to make sure people know, and come join us. You know, if you feel
Yeah.
or simply contribute if that's something
We
you're
may
able to
do a virtual event if we have to, so it'll be
Yeah.
online as well.
So we have a backup plan. That's what we're looking at
Yeah.
doing now with everything. Well, talk about women's history items,
Look at you,
because
Ann Sloan.
Sloan.
Oh, you got, yeah. So, as I mentioned before, we have a new exhibit that we just opened a couple weeks ago, the celebration of 100 years of the suffrage movement and the marking the anniversary of the vote. And we do have some gifts you can purchase online on our website. We have really cool bookmarkers, a children's book that's wonderful, t-shirts, everything that you can find on our website. Or if you can come in, we're open Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, just short weeks right now.
I'll zoom in and check out those items real quick. I want to make sure people can see them.
You can look around in the museum at the 2 exhibits we have, but if you're not comfortable with that, then we just recently put our tour, the women's exhibit, on our website, virtual, and you only pay $5 for a virtual tour. So you can click on that as well. You can do that anytime, day or night, if you just want to watch that as well.
Wow. And then we also have the exhibit coming up. People should
Yes.
know about this.
Yes, this is the exhibit that I mentioned. It's up now. It'll be up until March of 2021. We extended it because of COVID. We wanted to open it in April, and then we tried May, and then we tried
Yes.
July. So we're finally, so yes, 10 to 4. And our hours, check with us, because our hours are subject to change because of COVID. So and there's also, as we mentioned, I think, and actually Will's going to talk about, there's a lot of construction going on Bagby Street right now. So it's a little challenging to get downtown anyway. So be sure to call us or check our website before you come downtown. What else you got?
Well,
Oh, and
speaking
Ann,
of women's history,
our co-curator.
next week we have with us Ann Sloan. Okay,
Yes.
she's going to be on the show. Ann Sloan's going to be joining us, so make sure you tune in. It's going to happen on August 12th,
Next week.
Wednesday, August 12th, of course, at 7 o'clock. Our weekly show we do live here. The great thing is that we're actually going to be inside the exhibit hall,
Yes.
so you're going to get to see a lot of the exhibit.
The exhibit, yes.
Yeah, and we have a virtual exhibit that's going to be coming online,
Right.
or maybe already on, but this is a little bit different because you'll be able to ask questions to Ann Sloan. So here you are,
Right.
walking through the exhibit. If you have additional questions, it's really like you're there, but not only like you're there, it's like you're there with the best tour guide ever,
Yes.
one of the co-curators for the actual exhibit. So with Betty Trapp Chapman,
very passionate
so
about it, yeah.
she is very knowledgeable about women's history, and of course put together the project. And you'll find out about all these lovely ladies over here. We're going to talk about our 10th sword. We're going to talk about Hattie Mae White. You're going to learn all about their legacy, who they are, happening. Now, a big thank you to Joanne Zumbrum for joining us. Of course, she is a board member here at the Heritage Society. She's also on the Collections Committee chair, the Finance Committee chair, and have been a docent for 36 years. And if you missed out on last week, you can still go. You can still go to our YouTube channel.
Yes.
Yeah, you sure can. I should say that real quick. But we had a blast, and you know, who took us really on a VIP experience through the 1905 Sedai House. It was a treat to be able to have her knowledge. So kudos to her, and a really fun way to engage the board members. I think that's what Allison really wants to do, is make sure the board members are engaged. You know, Reeves gave a good talk a couple of months ago on the 1918 influenza and things like that. So it is fun to be able to engage our board members. Now, if you missed last week's show, like we said earlier, you can check it out on YouTube.
Yes.
We need your help, Houston, because we only have 216 subscribers. I think it's actually up to 220 now, but we only have a small number of people.
And we need more. We need more subscribers. So please go to YouTube, find us, subscribe, and then you can watch previous shows.
You sure can. And not only that, you can also, besides watching previous lives with Mr. McKinney and the Heritage Society, you can also see, architecture videos, Houston history tour videos, African American history videos. A lot of things are going to be available online, and we need to get our subscribers up. So if you have a Google account, you actually have a YouTube account. You just don't know, but you do. So you just go to youtube.com, and it automatically links to your Gmail account on your phone or your device, and then you just hit the subscribe button and the like button, and then you now are going to see other videos that we'll have coming up. So we do appreciate that. So something, by the way, for our Houston history lovers out there, tune in tomorrow, Thursday, August 6th from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock on 90.1 KPFT. It is a show that I do every week called The Houston Hour with Mr. McKinney and Catherine Anspon, editor over at Paper City Magazine. We do a weekly show about arts, entertainment, Houston happenings. So there's the art side of things. We have on the show John Guest Jr. with H. Mack, the Houston Museum of African American Culture, the CEO. There he is, Melanie. His husband. So check it out. Houston Museum of African American Culture. John Guest is CEO. And then we also have on the history side Susan Cooley. So we're going to probably get her on an actual live show here at the Excited. She can talk. Lamar High School alumni.
High School, there you go.
Part of your stomping ground there. And she's a nurse, native Houstonian, photographer. She's actually a beekeeper and an adventurer. And there she is with her famous father, of course. And she'll talk about growing up in the Cooley household, what life was like back then. So she's a dear friend and somebody who's willing to really share a lot about the Cooley lifestyle. So we're so excited to have her on board. She's wonderful. So once again, do not miss out. The Houston Hour with Mr. McKinney and Catherine Anspon, once again happening every Thursday, 3 o'clock on 90.1 KPFT. It's that simple. Michael Bloodworth, who came and spoke to us as our very first history guest, he does awesome lectures, okay? And he is going to do a really cool master class on Houston aviation history. It's happening on Saturday, October 22nd. It's happening at 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock. There's 3 different sessions that he's doing. It's all the same session, but 3 different opportunities and time slots. The master class is 1 hour long with limited seating, approximately about 15 people in the classroom, socially distanced, spread out. So please hurry if you're interested. You get to go, we'll show you the website in a second. The class is essentially free, but you do need to pay for admission into the museum, which is just $5. It's a very nominal fee. And the money does support the beautiful 1940 Air Terminal Museum and, of course, the great work the nonprofit does over there to really promote Houston aviation history itself. So, like I said, that's the building, by the way. I know many of y'all know that in the history community, but if you're not aware, that is where your classroom is going to be. It's stunning. It's also used for private events. That's the inside of the building, too, so it really is special. And once again, with Michael Bloodworth, the one and only, he is one of the most knowledgeable people when it comes to Houston aviation history, and he's going to be giving you a master class. Go to www.1940airterminal.org. Once again, www.1940airterminal.org. You'll be able to get all the information there. Once again, happening on Saturday, the 22nd at noon, okay? All right. Prizes.
My favorite part.
This is the best part. We're going to talk about prizes. Now, if you're a loyal viewer, we really appreciate it. If you're a loyal viewer, you mean the world to us. I know a lot of people have been chiming in. Like I said, and by the way, if you're there, let us know you're here. Go ahead and hit the heart button. Hit the heart button right now. Tell us that you're here. I'm actually watching on my screen. Let's see who we have chiming in. We got a couple hearts coming in. This is wonderful. Okay, Vicki Blakely, wonderful. She's watching. Thank you, Vicki. Thanks for joining us. She's real active, here in Houston. So very, very pleased to have them chiming in. So here we go. Let's talk about prizes. For those of you, by the way, who tuned in to Joanne Zumbrum's talk over here, and you stayed to the end. You had to stay to the end to win the prizes because you knew the questions are. Here we go. Here are going to be the answer to the trivia questions once again with Joanne. She did a great job. Look at her 1920s flapper outfit that she wore. She came all dressed up and really had a good time. It was a pleasure to have her do that. So let's see. This was the setting for the last talk that we had. Inside the beautiful Stati house. This is the youngest house that we have here. It goes back to 1905, and it was moved here in 1986. And you saw the great photos on the freeway when they chopped it in half. Now, here's the first question. Who was the founder? Oh, well, let me let you take over. This is the fun part.
Who was the founder and the developer of the Westmoreland neighborhood in 1902? Oh,
that's a clue.
There's your clue. Oh, is that another? Yes. And the answer is William Wright Baldwin.
And who's the winner?
The winner for that is Philip Washington. So Philip. We reached out to Philip, and I think he's going to swing by and pick up his prize.
Awesome. So we're contacting now. Here's how it works. When towards the end of our talk, after you hear the lecture, Will Howard will be asking questions about Bagby and about his entire presentation. So you got to watch the whole thing, and we'll mail you a prize, or Allison's happy to have it.
Run it out to your car. Curbside delivery.
Curbside, whatever you want. We've got some really great prizes. Okay, awesome Houston history items, books
from our gift shop.
From our gift shop as well. So you can't miss out. If you can't come visit us, you can always get these items donated to you, delivered to you. So there you go, Philip Washington. Good job, Philip Washington. Next question.
Okay, what was the name of the person Leah was married to? Henry's brother.
That's a clue. Henry's brother. Who knows the answer?
And Leah was one of the sisters. Oh, who's that man? Is that Grover. Grover, no, wrong Grover. The winner is Marcia Lutz, and we love Marcia Lutz. She's a docent with us, so she was watching. We appreciate it because she can't be here in person, so she's watching our show.
I love that, and no disrespect to Grover Cleveland, our president, 2 times actually. So no disrespect to him, but we wanted to make sure that Grover's the answer. I could have used Grover from Sesame Street.
I thought
should have done that. That would have been easier. How about that? Okay, next question.
Why is the milk bottle out of place in the Stati house? And this was pointed out to us by Joanne. And look at the milk. What shape is that?
Check that out. Zoom in on that.
It is square. And the answer, it should have been round for the time period. They were round before they were square. And the winner of that, my friend Ethelyn Cladell.
Oh, Ethelyn Cladell, she is wonderful. I love that.
She's watching us again tonight. She's been a faithful viewer on all these shows. She was
sure
watching
has.
Kimber Fountain, and I told you last week that she donated a beautiful rug for the Stati house. So
she sure did, and you know what's exciting too? She was the one who pointed out the rug you mentioned earlier. She did that too.
Yes, she did.
And the name Cladell might sound. If you're living in Southwest Houston in the Meyerland area, you're going to see Cladell Street, the shopping center that where the Baskin Robbins is at, and the old antique store used to be. That was done by her father, by Robert Cladell, Bob Cladell, and he named the street after the family, of course, because that was the original family farm. Earlier than that. And then her sister is Robin, and that's where Robindale comes from. It's a combination of Robin and then the word Dell, so that's really cool. A little fun tidbit. And Ethelyn's a realtor, so great. Who better to know Houston than somebody who's got a Houston history connection?
Realtors, we love realtors.
So here we go.
Okay, what's the name of the architect who did the 1915 remodel of the Stati house? I remember you all took a tour through there.
There's a
clue. He also did this building, so that's your clue. And the answer, does anyone recognize him? It's Alfred C. Finn. He did lots of wonderful things. That winner, Ethelyn won again. Oh my gosh, she's on top of it, man.
You know, and you can do that. All fairness, what we do is we use Facebook and Instagram. Yeah. It has a timestamp whenever you answer the question right.
And your wonderful production team goes through for me and points out who the Alana and the others of key and tells me who the winner is. So I'm not picking favorites.
No favorites here. We do everything on the up and up. So thank you so much. So she won twice. You can do that too. Yeah. So don't hold back when you want to answer questions. Next
and then,
question.
Of course, the most famous question, what year was the Stati house built? And I know you all surely guessed that one because we talk about it all the time. 1905. And there are the cute little Mr. and Mrs. Stati. And the winner, Marcia Lutz.
I love that.
She probably knows that from her studying of her docents.
She's tuning in. So she's
watching.
And she's answering questions and tuning
in. Us again. We miss you, Marcia.
How about that? Okay. This is important. On September 30th, she's back. She's back. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. The one and only Kimber Fountain. Kimber Fountain is going to return, of course, author and Galveston historian. Here is her book, by the way. She's going to be back. Zoom in on the book. She's talking about the Galveston Seawall Chronicles. Okay, this is a big deal. So everybody should know this. I'll let you look at the screen in a second. On September 8th and 9th of 2020, we're going to be celebrating 120 years 120th anniversary of the great 1900 hurricane, okay? The great storm of 1900, the Galveston storm. This is before we started naming storms. So it's a pretty big deal that Kimber Fountain's going to come join us. So she's going to join us at the end of September, okay? What she's doing is she's offering to all the viewers out there, all of y'all watching now and then, of course, later on YouTube and things like that, she is offering a special of free shipping. And she's going to personally autograph it for the entire month of August. Now, August is Houston's birthday month, so why not learn about history behind our region? The 1900 hurricane did make its way up the coast and hit Houston as well. Obviously not as hard, but we felt it here in Houston. Okay, lots of businesses were impacted by that and homes as well. And of course, the 1915 hurricane as well impacted us. So go to this site over here I'm going to show you in a second to go ahead and get your book. There she is in front of the 1911 beautiful Hotel Galvez. The promo code is Seawall120. Seawall120. You go to kimberfountain.square.site will get you to her page where you can buy the book from her directly, and it supports the work that she does. But more importantly, she's giving you that discount. So Seawall 120, for all of our viewers out there, she will give you that discount of free shipping, and she'll autograph the book to you.
Yes.
And again, you're not going through a third-party book dealer. You're going right through her, which she appreciates. And we want to make sure you have that book. You've got this book right over here, which we're going to be giving away a couple copies that we did earlier too. But have this book for the big talk, because the talk on September 30th is only and all about the 1900 hurricane, the seawall, and raising the city of Galveston. So you're going to learn something new. So once again, by the way, she did offer this for all of her books, so it's a little bitty secret just for you viewing right now. She's going to put it for all 3 of her books, so you can actually order all 3 of these and get the discount on free shipping, because if you're going to buy that one, you might as well get shipping free on the other ones too, and she'll pay for that. So you can save a couple dollars there. Hey, there she is again.
Oh, that's cute.
There's Ann Sloan. We had the pleasure of having a little meet with Ann Sloan to talk about her awesome exhibit and run through her talk next Wednesday, guys. It's happening on the 12th. Next Wednesday, 7 o'clock. Do not miss out. Ann Sloan, the one and only, is going to be right here, on live from the Heritage Society with Mr. McKinney, so do not miss out. And let's see what else we got. Hey, you know what? We're getting that time. It is time for a librarian, historian, tour guide, and active on the Harris County Historical Commission, the one and only Will Howard. Will Howard is going to be coming out, so let's have him on out. Let's do that. Will Howard, come join us. Look at that. Yeah, bam, there we go. Sit down, Will Howard. And thank you to Allison Bell, by the way, for updating us on all the great things that are happening at the Heritage Society. Once again, heritage.society.org is what will get you to our site. Will Howard joining us. I'm telling you, when we announced Will Howard is going to be on there, I cannot tell you how many kind folks were like, I've been waiting to hear him, I'm wanting to hear him, because you've been doing this for a while, and we're going to talk about a little bit about your background, as somebody who, like I said, a librarian over the Friends of the Texas Room for many years. If you went there to do research, you bumped into Will and his, him over there too, and then, active tour guide, which this kind of talk you're doing today is a little bit about the tours that you give, right? You're going to kind of bring it to life with us right here.
Yeah, there was an awful lot of life on Bagby Street. Nowadays, we think you just want to run down the street and avoid the traffic. But in reality, people have been doing that for a long time for a lot of reasons.
We're going to talk about those reasons now. Well, let's dive right into your walking tour. Again, a preliminary kind of look at this, because you're always adding to this tour, which is wonderful. Y'all can chime in. If you've got questions for Will Howard, you're more than welcome to chime in. We like those questions. I've got that's what I'm doing over here, by the way. I've got the Facebook Live and the Instagram Live kind of present. So if you've got questions, you're more than welcome to ask them. We've got some fine folks saying hello. Ricky Vargas just joined on Instagram. Thank you so much, Ricky Vargas. But yeah, so let's just dive right in.
Well, it seems strange to say, but this big dot here is where San Felipe would be, which would have been the capital's town of Stephen F. Austin's original colonies. And it didn't take long for people to figure out that a great way to get their goods out and to get goods in was a road that went from San Felipe to Harrisburg, where there was another settlement there already. And ultimately, the traffic as it moved along would eventually bump into Bagby Street or thereabouts. As a matter of fact, in the earlier maps, the extension of Bagby that we now call West Dallas was just simply called San Felipe.
Makes perfect sense, right? It's following the trail, it's taking you out west. And people should know the significance of San Felipe, the town itself. Really San Felipe de Austin, where Stephen F. Austin would sign his land grant. So the idea of this kind of being this original interstate commerce that we had in the early days, following really along Buffalo Bayou, kind of that area. And you just tell me when you want to go to the next slide, and we'll make it that way.
Yeah. There was another town up north on the Brazos called Washington on the Brazos. And it became a competitor road. So we're more interested in the San Felipe Road, which would have been basically going to Brookshire, and at Katy it would cross over the bayou to the south bank and follow the tree line onward. That's what you call a riparian forest. And you had a lot of water in the creek, so you actually had real trees growing in a prairie where you don't expect trees. And so people would travel just on the outer edge of the forest.
And I think what's great, too, is that Buffalo Bayou kind of runs east to west.
It does.
Which is unlike the other bayous and waterways that we have here. Most rivers are going to run, north to south, but this actually runs east to west. So it took people naturally further out east, which is important, or depending on what your perspective is, further out west if you're in Harrisburg.
The rivers normally people think of running south out of Texas, often silted up at the mouth. And this was bad news. The ship can easily wreck on those. Mm-hmm. So it was economically risky. So ultimately the ground route to Harrisburg became a much more desirable, safer route.
And Sally Comstock just said hi, by the way. People are chiming in saying hi. We really appreciate that. Show us some likes on Facebook. If you're doing it, hit that like button. That really matters to us. We appreciate that. Thank you so much, Sally. Next slide. You okay with that?
There was a Mr. Klopper. He came from Cincinnati back in the very early 20s, and he had a family that was very adventuresome. And his son eventually would write a journal about his exploration of the general area. And he was very good about exploring what we now think of as the San Felipe Trail. So actually, Mr. Klopper was, this is not in the tour, but he was also one of the first persons to ever write a narrative description of what we call chili con carne, which he found, of course, in San Antonio de Bejar. So here you can see that the road would proceed there to Katy, go to south, and then it would bump into Bagby right about there. So we go to the next one there. Bagby Street, here's White Oak coming down Main Street. Bagby was not a named street here. The last named street here is Brazos, and the back lots would have had facing blank land without a name, but it very soon became Bagby Street. Okay, let's go ahead. Here, you're more familiar with looking at Bagby, about a 13 to 15 block stretch from Dallas or Clay on down to Franklin. It breaks and then it goes further on. But you can see there all sorts of green historical markers and blue historical districts here on the modern map as well. And it's on the southern bank of the bayou. Okay? Now, talk about some serious women on the frontier. One of them was Obedience Smith. She was able to lay claim to a piece of land that stretched all the way virtually from Bagby out across, even included the Menil collection. Big chunk of land. And that got divvied up one way or the other. But her son, Ben Fort Smith, actually built her little cabin, apparently along Lamar somewhere between Louisiana and Bagby. So in a sense, she might have been the first resident with an actual real wooden structure. There were a lot of tents in those days. That she eventually, of course, did move off and go into elsewhere. But she was quite a person in her own right.
And I love this, by the way. This is my buddy Audrey Cook, and Audrey Cook is really active with the Winlow Place Civic Association and neighborhood. She lives in the area, and I presented her in a couple of different venues that we've had her speak at, and she's just wonderful. That book is like the size of a phone book. It is this thick, I'm telling you. It's very detailed about the legacy and history of Obedience Fort Smith. So a little shout out to Audrey Barrett Cook, a buddy of mine, and of course that marker that she worked so hard to get put there, which is by Allen Linear Middle School, which is wonderful. So,
yeah. Now here, there we go. For just general orientation, all those little diboppies didn't come up.
Yeah, they didn't come up. So there's normally some activity on there, but it didn't come up for a second. But I guess that's okay. We'll have to.
Well, anyway,
work around
her Obedience's cabin. If this is
Louisiana, huh?
There's Lamar. So her cabin would have been somewhere between Louisiana and Bagby. Now, in 1837, there was a veterans hospital virtually right under us. Mm-hmm. Exactly which lot it was on, but Ashbel Smith had been designated as the Surgeon General of the Army by Sam Houston. He actually was rooming with him at the time. It was kind of crowded in those days. And so he built a veterans hospital basically underneath the Heritage Society offices over there. It was one little quick little structure and two borrowed tents. One guy got his tent back, so they said, well, let's go ahead and build a real one. So they ended up building another one that when the Veterans Hospital left, because the capital was moved to Austin, well, then it became more like a city hospital. Now, also nearby, in that general area where the dog leg is, here you have the dog leg. Here you have Bagby coming down here, and we're familiar with that little dog leg right there. In this general area right there was basically an African American civic center. You have
well, and the very famous, Pilgrim building was right there, which we're going to talk about later in your talk to give people perspective. And of course, Antioch Baptist Church is right over here by the old Enron building. So you kind of have an idea. Andrew Street is a main thoroughfare within 4th Ward, so you can kind of see where that's at. And I do apologize. Mr. Howard put these really cool markings on the map that for some reason didn't come up when we transferred it, but we'll let you keep going.
Now, if you look here at Bell Street at Louisiana, imagine a rather irregular polygon shape, and that was the originally designated site for a little place called Rice Institute.
Oh, wow.
It was going to be a vocational school for boys here in town.
Yeah.
They seem to have done all right. They did move the idea of where to plant it.
They kept moving it further and further south. Rice Institute, of course, it starts construction in 1909 and is completed in October of 1912 as the first class. By the way, Deanie Hoffines just joined us. Thank you so much, Deanie. Say hi to you. Deanie Hoffines is joining us, which is great. And also too, we have Councilmember Alcorn. Thank you so much. Councilmember Alcorn is joining us as well, so we appreciate both of y'all chiming in. We're looking at that right now, and thanks for learning more about Bagby Street. Keep going, Will.
Okay, let's flip on.
Next
see
slide.
What happens. Here's just an old map. Here you can see Obedient Smith's name here. Here was that competitor road, Washington on the Brazos, and that would be here into the big town of Houston, Texas.
And there's remnants of the road is still there. It veers northwest.
Yes.
And, it's interesting. You have what we're talking about, of course, is Washington Avenue, and you had North Main. It used to be called Montgomery Road because it took you north to Montgomery County, obviously. And the same thing is true with Liberty Road, takes you out east. So I think a lot of this is fascinating, the way that you're kind of taking us back to an earlier time.
You can imagine this would have been Harrisburg over here at the juncture of Brays Bayou. So the junctures of the tributaries was very important to create a larger pool of water and a deeper pool of water. And ultimately here you have the White Oak Bayou, that's what's worked for.
Yeah, you're right. White Oak Bayou, Buffalo Bayou, there it is.
Okay. All right.
Next slide.
Okay. All right. Here we have Sam Houston Park. There we go. Now, here in this big blue circle, you can imagine there would be times when there would be dozens of big ox carts carrying great amounts of goods, primarily cotton bales, coming to Houston to be carried out from the port of Houston. And they would camp literally along the bank side, on both sides of the bank. So if you can imagine right here where we are, you might hear, oxen bellowing in the distance. You might see campfires right out there. And so the K here is where the Kellum House would have been, and you have the Antioch Church actually started as a brush arbor at the end of Rush Street, right over here behind the Hobby Center, right over there, and then they moved eventually. You had two cemeteries that overlapped, Sam Houston Park and the City Hall Annex here in this red, the Episcopals and the Masons. Here, of course, you have City Hall in green and annex there. The block that before this annex was made, there was a fellow named DeGeorge. He was big doing the city real estate, built several hotels and whatnot. The Lancaster still stands.
Yeah, the 1926 Lancaster, and Michael DeGeorge is the house that you're talking about, right on that site over there where the annex was built on top of, and really important gentleman in Houston's hotel history. So
now, when there was discussion about moving City Hall from Market Square to somewhere else, this was the general area in question. The preferred site was this one right here, the DeGeorge block. But I don't think there were many people that wanted to tell Mr. George he was going to have to move. So they said, why don't we put it across the street?
And it's funny because he owned a bunch of houses on this block for his family. He had a large family, Italian family, so they had lots of family members living there. So you're absolutely right. Next slide. Are you okay with the next slide?
Yeah, well, after Mr. George did finally leave, then there was a City Hall cafe, and there was the Houston Stoneworks and various uses. All right, let's go ahead. Now, Ashbel Smith, he was the fellow who put in that Veterans Hospital, and he was a Surgeon General. and here you have a real fine book about him. There was a lot of dealing with yellow fever in those days. I believe around the year 1838 or 39, about a third of the city of Houston contracted yellow fever, and a tenth of the city died. I mean, we're talking about pandemic again, but nowadays we have a little bit of understanding of what's happening. In those days they called it, oh, the miasma is going to come and get you. But, okay, well, let's take it. Now there's the modern version of the Antioch Church, of course. It's a nice Gothic structure. And it's at Clay and Robin Street. A lot of African-American school teachers lived on Robin because there was a high school there, there was a middle school there, and there's actually a ballpark just behind Antioch called the West End Ballpark, where the Houston Buffs played their baseball from I think from about 05 to 20 or 30 or something like that.
It's where the power plant, the power grid is at now, right?
Exactly, indeed. Yeah. We've always been power hitters. Okay, now here is the kink in the road. This was 1907 Sanborn, and here you have Babby coming down here, and you expect it to just simply merge off into San Felipe, which would have been approaching here. But see, all this stuff is in the middle. And much of that was, in fact, part of the African American Civic Center eventually. And as development occurred, then these streets either got removed or renamed or shuttled around. So when you go down there and you take that dog leg, you see where it goes up to Frederick here. That was a part of the idea because you had San Felipe coming in past Rice. This was the Rice University place. And it come here, and then when it's turned, it went straight up to Dallas. So let's see, 21, page 21 right there. That's where the Kellum-Noble house is, right where we're sitting right now.
And that's why we picked this house too, because we're really we've been here since 1847, the physical house itself, and you really can kind of see what was all around this particular house as you walk through it.
Mm-hmm. And okay, let's go another one, see what happens. Now here's some more Sanborn insurance, and you can see.
And tell people real quick, these are amazing, resources for any young person, any person of any age, really going out there wanting to look at old Houston history. You can find it with these insurance maps. Where can people go to get these maps at? Near to your heart.
Two versions. The original as issued version is online from UT, little school down on the Colorado. And that's what these are. The Texas room has some in-use versions. Mm-hmm. So the local insurance agents would say, hey, Jim Bob, he had a porch onto this house right there. Let's go in there and just draw that on. Mm-hmm. So even though it's still labeled the date of issue, it now carries ink that is new. Mm-hmm. And if he tore that thing down, somebody might just paste it over some blank paper.
Oh yeah, you see layers and layers like a baklava.
Right, and so basically right here, what they're doing is they're just simply helping themselves to some fire insurance gambling about who's going to burn down and who's not. Some of them you'll see that they show where the water pipes are and where the hydrants are, things like that.
Utilities are important to learn about.
And most of these are dwellings. Here's San Felipe Road. There's Baldwin Street, and there's Polk. See, Polk disappeared eventually. There's the Washington High School, African American High School right there. Right there is Bagby coming down, right there. So if you came to Bagby in San Felipe, there would have been your Washington High School. And there's a middle school right there.
These maps are a great resource, and like I said, they're available. It's in your public library. You're able to go there and learn about Houston history through these awesome maps.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go. Okay, apparently here we have a hat falling off my head. That's for a dramatic purpose. And also in 07, this is a little bit closer up. Here you can see where that high school is right there. And then a middle school. And there was the public colored and what's called the colored library was very nearby as well. And teachers lived on Robin Street, so it was a real cultural center. And then when they added the Pilgrim building, do you have that one on the next one? Sure enough. Wow, that's a triangular building by Mr. Finn. He stepped right out there and he built them a fine college. There was a mutual aid society, the Pilgrims, Ancient Order of the Pilgrims, developed by African Americans for African Americans of the area. And so they were able to finance this building, and in that building was all sorts of major organizations, the YMCA, the Houston Defender, the Girl Scouts, just one on and on and on. They had a big auditorium for all sorts of great big activities. And of course, eventually it got sold and demolished in the 60s because the freeways were going to be coming through and it was going to redesign everything. All right, let's go up one more. Well, sure enough, there's a house I noticed before. It's called the Kellum House, when it was the original headquarters of the Houston Park Department. And if you notice, the word is singular because they only had one park. And there's the restored version of it. Okay, let's go up. And my goodness, here is an early version of what Sam Houston Park looked like. And notice this nice little bridge they have here going across the bayou with equally decorous attention given to it. All this land, of course, eventually got cut off and given to the Highway Department and other activities. But there's certainly been some interesting interpretations of the park over the years. All right. And while you have just up the street there, you have Ms. Addison, our librarian, who was the librarian in 1904 in the first library up at McKinney and Travis. And then she also supervised the origin of our new library. But the architect had decided that he had been to Alcalá, Spain, and had seen the Atlas de Henares, this structure over here, and this inspired him to do the Spanish Renaissance plateresque style here of the Julia Addison building. Particularly, you can see all the fancified fenestration at the top, which would have been a wall of the sort. You can see the same similar activity up there, and then there are all sorts of decorative details that are not obvious at this point. I'll give you a tour anytime you like. Okay, next one.
But the resemblance is, is there.
It really is. And of course, this is a nice postcard you have there. It's a detail from overhead. And here you have a mural from the WPA period. And here you have the old reading room that's up on the second floor. And it's just a wonderful enjoy to go and visit itself. All right, let's see what else we got there. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Once upon a time, here was Sam Houston Hall. 1928, Jesse Jones decided that he was going to pull off a coup, and he had the 1928 Democratic National Presidential Convention right here in Houston, and he built this in several months in order to accommodate them. I think about 20,000 seats or something like that. Now, next door to him would have been the DeGeorge block, which became the City Hall Annex. Number 3 would be a portion of Tranquility Park right here. Number 4 right here is where City Hall would eventually be. But at this stage in time, in the 1930s, early period, it was serving as a venue for traveling circuses, thank you. So the use of that block has not changed that much from a circus to city council. So then we go to number 5 here. This is Herman Park, or Herman Square. And you can see it doesn't look like we know it today. It was redesigned. Number 6, this would have been the other half of Tranquility Park. This right here is a Greek Orthodox church built around 1917. And all their services were conducted in Greek. I think they said Alpha, Omega, and that kind of thing. That's real fine Greek, I can tell you right there. And they, of course, did eventually move out, I think, in the 60s, and they've got them in a remarkable multi-block establishment there in Montrose.
Well, it's ironic because so they would, establish in 1917 right over here on this block, of course, and then 1952, I believe they moved out to Montrose, but they tore down the other DeGeorge mansion that was on Montrose Boulevard to expand their campus. So, but they have one of the largest Greek festivals in the nation, so we're happy for that.
The food is great.
The food's great. They work on it year round, but they did tear down the DeGeorge mansion, so I'm a little sad about that.
And number 7, one hears about the House family. If you don't know the House family,
T.W. House.
T.W. was the original E.M. House son, is often credited for putting Woodrow Wilson in the White House, and there's a compelling good argument for that. But this would have been the Casey courthouse right there, that big white block with the red square windows. And there's a couple of historical markers there for the houses there. In reality, Mr. House actually had a house right across the street from the library right over here. And incidentally, number 9 is the Addison building. It was built upon the site of Thomas Bagby's home. So Bagby Street, of course, came from Mr. Bagby. Number 8 right here is a little bitty oil company called Shell. This is Shell number 1, if you recall it. It's made of a lot of limestone, just like City Hall is right down there. And let's see, 10. There we go. Looks like we have Sam Houston Park over there. Did I leave anything out? I have wondered, is this the cistern back there? I'm not sure.
The cistern's right there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the 1926-27 cistern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Now there's a big evangelistic temple, I believe, right there, and it burned in the 30s as well, and that was benefited by having a fire station right across the bayou, across the bridge right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that's what that is, because there was one on the corner there. All right, next one. If we look at this one, here's City Hall. I like this imagery. Looks like a ziggurat going up in Babylon. Joseph Finger described this style as Greek. And once you learn how to read simplified Greek, you can see the Greek architecture in there, as well as the stair-step skyscraper you have right here. This came out of New York. I think back in the 20s or so, apparently New Yorkers felt as though all those damn high buildings were going to block out the sunshine downtown and create a miasma in the air. And so they had an ordinance passed that you had to set back your skyscrapers for air and sunshine. All right. And so that's what we have there. Now here you got some Greek imagery right here. You probably really do not realize that this is Pegasus, the flying horse. You see the clouds he's up around in the sunshine rays. He's being ridden by a hero human called Bellerophon. And that horse is being tamed by Poseidon, the god of horses and the sea, using the golden bridle given by Athena, the goddess of wisdom. Over here, you also have another piece of imagery. You have Lycurgus prostrating himself out, swearing an oath of loyalty to Greek democracy. And over here you have Eos, also called Aurora, bringing on the dawn and the four winds. And there are multiple Greek bas-reliefs around the building. Well, actually, right there we have King Hecatop. I get my Greek mixed up. Let's see, I think that might be Charlemagne or King John, I forget which. Anyway, that's not part of it at the moment. Let's go on. Okay, now here's an image of you've seen the Hobby Center from this view. And here you have another one from the top. And we'll go back in time on the next slide. And let's see, there we have indeed the Sam Houston Coliseum and Music Hall that came up in the 30s. And it followed the Sam Houston Hall where the Democrats had met. You also had, this was, if we go back go forward one more slide, excuse me. Here's the old Democratic Hall. Apparently they enjoyed their patriotic flags in those days. Who would have guessed? The first time the rodeo came into town, it was in the Sam Houston Hall, which is what it came to be called. Now, interesting enough, you also find on that block, before Sam Houston Hall, you have Dr. Elva Wright's TB clinic, built in 1913. She had come to town, she was a medical doctor and all that, and big organizer, and she said, my goodness, we've got to do something about this TB here in town. And so she set up a clinic right there. And you can see the very nice landscaping to keep nice air going. And look at all those windows for ventilation. And I suppose they put the fence up to imply some sort of quarantine-like effect. And she was around for quite a long time and had a great effect on the city. All right. Now here we have our, let's see, okay, we're going down Bagby Street. And here we go, here's Rusk and here's Capitol. And right there was a courthouse built in the early period. And then there was a second one built right on top of it in the 20s. It was a combined criminal courthouse and jailhouse. And so you would have a courthouse there, then you had the fire station there, and then you would have the South Houston Hall right there. And over there you would have that evangelistic temple that burned.
So here's Tranquility Park now. Well, Tranquility Park's actually right here for people's perspective, here and here. Yeah, look at that.
And again, all these pink things suggest that there's a lot of domestic life. Okay, back up one. Okay, you see this line fuzzy through there? And this line right there making that irregular space? There was a big gully. It had been eaten out by a creek over years and years and years. And that's why you really don't have much activity going on there, because it was just a big old gully and most people didn't want to live, bottom of a hole, how some people are. And but ultimately, if you go to Tranquility Park, you begin sensing there's land there, but it's slightly not up to the level of the land around it, and that's part of the reason why. And I believe at one point the Greyhound bus station was about here, and at one point the Houston Press newspaper was there. Not the most recent one people know about. There was another one. I don't want to shock you, but it was colorful, and they followed scandal and things like that, unlike the most recent Houston Press that was stayed and formalized. If you've read that, you know how that was. Okay, here's an 1890 Sanborn. Here's Russ Street, and it's about to go into Bagby right here, and it's talking about the old wooden bridge. Here's a mattress factory right there, and they also had storage space across there. And again, you see lots of dwellings. Here they call it African American shanties. And let's see, there we go. All right, next one. Okay, now there's something I just kind of caught. If you've gone down Bagby, you're familiar with this little bitty Sweeney triangle sitting there that has the clock in it. And that clock has a long history of moving around from one place to another, and it was, at one point, it was in what was called the farmer's market that we'll meet just in a moment. Underneath the bridge, going back one, was a police firing range underneath the Capitol Street Bridge. And this standing oak that you see right over here, that was there. It is not a hanging oak. It's been clearly defined. So when you hear somebody refer to it, just simply smile and just don't try to argue with it, because they won't believe you anyway. But it was not the hanging oak. The executions they did there were inside the courthouse, not outside. Okay, now here was an imagery of the first courthouse that was there, and it was just really stylishly done very well. However, it was preceded by the Freedmen's Aid Society, which was an aid to the freedmen for educational purposes. And before that, there was Mr. Stanley, who was a great horticulturist and selling of seed stock and stuff like that. And so he probably is the one who's responsible for keeping that oak in good shape. And it would have been on the side of this courthouse, which is now right there. Here is the long, now called the Bayou Place. Previously it was the Thomas Convention
Thomas Convention Center, yeah.
Yeah,
and show people what's inside there, because besides just being Bayou Place, this is really cool. Many people don't realize this is there. We're going to wrap it up and tell people about that.
Yeah, if you go inside the front door there off Smith Street, you'll see this replica of Mr. Thomas's congressional office. And it's really a remarkable thing to look at. He was, in fact, very, very important. He was on, I believe, something called the Space and Aerospace Committee and something called the House of Representatives. And apparently there was some thought that maybe they would put an office here in Houston. Of course, he had a friend who was in the Senate. I believe they called him Lyndon Johnson at the time, the vice president. And I've never heard that he did anything to bring that to be.
Good friends with George R. Brown, and all those guys worked together to bring us NASA, along with Humboldt Oil, of course, and Rice University.
Yes.
So we were very lucky. Hey, there's Betty Trapp Chapman.
Yes, indeed. If right here, Texas Avenue, and she once put together about 40 or 50 historical markers going down about 20 blocks down Texas Avenue. So one of these days, just go down to Texas and just take a sauntering walk back and forth across the streets. And near this intersection, I believe over here, was what they call the newsboys' homes. Back in the olden days, there were boys that delivered newspapers. And a lot of them were from poor homes or orphan homes. And Emma Richardson built or obtained use of a structure here so that they actually would have a place to live and recreation. So it's amazing, and the city also paid part of that. Here's an 1886 Sanborn. As you come across, Bagby is coming up just like this. Right there is across, it stops at the bayou. It stopped at the bayou, and there was no bridge. On the other side of the bayou was this that was developing in the early period, basically an ironworks section. You can see all these different ironworks sections, which rather balances out the brickwork sections that were happening on the other side of Texas Avenue. The bayou right there used to be a big S shape. And so they said, you know, well, let's just straighten it out, and they did. They cut it off there at Preston and over here and made this the new channel. And so that made all this land available. And they said, well, you know, we need a new farmer's market, so let's put it there. And they did. And I tell you, it was a big thing. I have 114,000 square feet, 290 retail stalls, and friends and neighbors, yes, indeed, free parking for 500 cars.
So next time you're at the Wortham Center, you'll be able to know that used to be the land that the farmers market used to be on. Isn't that great? So once again, opens March 21st, 1929 on this particular site. And we're now out of time, but I want to real quick with the waterworks and fire station.
Well, you know, we can come back sometime and pick up from here and go forward.
We sure could. You know, those are always options. But real quick, I'll let you talk about the waterworks and the fire station. And then
everybody knows where the aquarium restaurant is. If you don't, just kind of sit down and rub your head.
But I love that it connects with the old waterworks too.
Right.
And that's
it's on the site of the actual waterworks, and there are two structures there that still attest to it.
And then Mel Chin's awesome 7 pillars.
Right. And here you have the ballet center and the skywalk going over to the Wortham. And here you have Vinegar Hill.
Talk about Vinegar Hill, because this is a fun little Houston history, legend, tidbit of information that people don't normally hear about. So talk about it real quick.
Well, it was an entertainment center, you see. Between Preston and Franklin Street, well, some said it was just plainly lawless. It was shocking. But there was drinking and gambling, and there was even sensual pleasuring going on in that area. All kinds of things. And it was basically supervised by a large, entrepreneurial, strong African-American woman called Queen Caroline. She died in 1880, and then the railroads moved in. And then just like another strong force, we have the George Bush moving in at the end of Bagby Street, and over there you've got
I love how they're looking at each other across the bayou, the wonderful Baker Commons, which also not only shows legacy of James A. Baker III, also Captain Baker, and then Judge Baker, and then of course James A. Baker II. So really, really neat. And then lastly, we'll talk about the railroad and post office. Real quick, tell people what used to be where the post office is today.
Well, after the Queen Caroline died off, then the Houston and Texas Central Railway built them a depot. That was sold to Southern Pacific, who went through about 3 or 4 versions of their own depot. Here's a top view of what the old post office was at one time. You can see here Bagby coming in, and it would have been intersecting Washington Avenue if all this development had not happened. You can still go back there, but if you look to the left, there's a parking area, but you can't go to Washington. Amtrak is sitting right over here. So here you have, you come across the Franklin Bridge, and there you have the Ballet Center, and there you have the Wortham, and there you have the Baker Commons right there.
This is a glimpse in the future. Tell people what's going to be there.
So they finally closed down the Barbara Jordan post office. and they're in the process of repurposing and refreshing the building. And in theory, this is what it's going to look like. And in theory, there's going to be a rooftop garden and dining area and multiple retail and entertainment venues. It's supposed to be just a real Jim Dandy.
Well, and more importantly, it saves that building itself. It was built in the '60s and it has a lot of brutalist style, important features to it. So we want to keep it as long as we can. And this is Frank Liu and his son that are really revamping HTX post office space. So there it is. More to come on that. Well, that's the end of a quick historical tour with Will Howard. We are so grateful to be able to have you spend some time with us. Thank you again to Will Howard. I've got a couple more announcements which we will go through pretty quickly, but I want to make sure you guys get to hear them. Ann Sloan, of course, will be on the show next week. You get to go inside the actual museum, look at the exhibit, learn about the exhibit. So that's going to be happening with Ann Sloan next Wednesday, August 12th at 7 o'clock right here. And then on Wednesday, September 19th, we're going to unveil our new studios, by the way. Kirksey Gregg, thank you to our board member, Kirksey Gregg, at Productions LLC for doing our space. You're going to love it. This is his company. Speaking of Bayou Place, we learned earlier that used to be on the side of the old Albert Thomas Convention, or same building rather, on the old side of the criminal courts building. This is what he does, and our new studio is wonderful. That is the new studio. We're not going to have a live audience yet, but we are going to be filming live from there on the 19th, courtesy of our awesome board member, Kirksey Gregg, and his company, Kirksey Gregg Productions, and the ballroom at the Bayou Place. So that's where we're going to be doing it on the 19th. And then, of course, on the 19th, our guest speaker is going to be the one and only Mike Acosta with the Houston Astros Baseball Club. You do not want to miss out on Mike, because you can ask questions about Astros baseball history, and he's got the answers because he is their historian for their team and their authentication manager. So he is wonderful, and will be talking to us on the 19th. So the 12th is Ann Sloan, the 19th is Mike Acosta, and some other great guests are coming up as well. So look forward to that. It'll be live in our brand new studio with also some memorabilia. So once again, the 19th of August at 7 o'clock, live from the Heritage Society with Mr. McKinney happening then. And then, of course, if you like old postcards, stay tuned, because if you love them, on Wednesday, the September 2nd show is going to have with us Daniel Monsanto. Daniel Monsanto wrote the book about Houston postcards, so that's going to be happening once again on September 2nd. So like I said, no shortage of fun things that are happening here. Want to remind you to like and follow our social media page, especially our Facebook page, because that matters to us. Great posts done by our communications director, Debbie Duty. So don't miss out on that. And of course, like Allison Bell said earlier, our executive director, YouTube matters. It makes a big difference. So please go ahead and like our YouTube page. Give us that like button over there on that, and follow and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It means the world to us. You're more than welcome to follow Mr. McKinney's Historic Houston on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can learn about all the great things that we're doing with Houston history and our free tours that we offer on board the Houston History Bus when you simply like and follow our pages. So I know we're getting close to the end, so we thank you for that. Let's see, and lastly, a big thank you to our team, Alana, Isaac, Kian Kai, and of course, Allison Ayers-Bell and Minette Basel, our executive director and our board chair. Thank you so much for making the show possible. We'll see you next week, each Wednesday, 7 o'clock on the Facebook Live and on the Instagram Live. Good night. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care, Houston.